Hello, welcome to episode 128 in this series where I'm programming an NES game from scratch tonight live on Twitch. Hopefully we'll get some people to tune in, say hi, and ask some questions, see what we're doing. But even if we won't, we'll still be working on this game. Just one quick note, I did comment out this code here. Because that was making some noise in the beginning of the game, and I didn't want that. The other thing is, let me know what you think about the way that the screen is set up here for the stream. I've, out of necessity of putting the chat on the display, I've had to shrink the computer screen a little bit, so we can actually see the chat in the upper right corner-ish area. And added a backdrop too. Just thought it would look nice, instead of just having sort of very sparse stream content. So last time we had gotten the game working to the point where the ship will fly, and once we hit the appropriate point in the map, we will reach the spawn object that we placed. Let's bring up the map. And that will spawn enemy objects with the appropriate timing and count of what we determined in the map when we created it. There were a couple of things that we needed to fix. One was that the current way that the export tool is exporting this, it is not properly accounting for the launch point, the spawn point item. And so while it works if I manually add the entity in here, we got to fix the code. I think I have an idea of how we can do that to get the get this to get generated properly without doing too much to the export tool. So let's we'll look at that, and then once that's done, I want to make it so that the launch code will add the it'll add the X offset as a bit of data for the group of enemies, so that we can keep track of when the enemy is destroyed. We want to update some information that the group has been members of the group have been destroyed, and that if we hit the 0 point, we should do something special, right? Like a lot of shoot 'em ups, you have if you defeat a group of 3 or 4 enemies, you get a power up or bonus points or something like that. We want to be able to track that same kind of thing. So what we'll do is let's get the entity stuff exporting properly, and then once that's working, we can get the grouping stuff working, and then we've got a pretty solid base to go off of to start implementing some levels. And incorporating some of the graphics, like at the top of the screen you'll see that blue ship there. I'd like to actually get that incorporated in to the game and replace the ship that we have here. We're thinking that that's probably going to be the final-ish design of the ship. And then we have the title screen up on the top right of the stream there. Recently got a finalized or final-ish version of the title screen that's actually displayable on the real NES, including a really neat little shimmer animation in that middle line, which looks really awesome. So we'll be implementing that. One challenge with the title screen is that it uses, I think, 237 or 238 tiles, which is most of them. So we'll have to investigate char ROM banking or char RAM. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do there. Probably just regular ROM banking. Hey Banchaku, how's it going? And but we'll see. One thing I'm working on separately, let me show this here. I can't show the tool that I'm working on yet because it's not done, and it's actually on my other computer. But I'll post a little demo of it. So on the wiki here, there is the reference guide, and the reference guide has under it this mappers grid. And I was asking on the Discord today if there was anything that helped you identify which mapper you might want depending on what features you are looking for. And there was a tool that Teppel's created. It's a wizard where you kind of answer some basic questions and it will provide you an answer of what mapper you want. But what I started working on today was it gives you a listing, just a table listing of the mappers with standard columns of let's take mapper 0 as an example, just because it's easy to explain with that. So it has a table view. The labels are across the top, and it tells you the name, the ROM sizes, the program sizes, the max program available, what the program window is if it's available. Same thing with the prog RAM and the char ROM and char RAM and the windowing there, what kind of mirroring it supports, if it's fixed or not, if it is susceptible to bus conflicts, the IRQ, if it has an IRQ, if it supports additional audio, and what the mapper number is. We'll probably need to add MMC3 is enough for everyone, yeah. We'll probably have to add some additional fields there, but the point was that, so the page right now is just this table of the mappers that I've manually entered in, and there are checkboxes across the top, and then you can say, I need four-screen mirroring, and it will narrow down all the mappers that will provide you four-screen mirroring, instead of having to go through everything here. Now it'll link. I'm not doing this just for myself. I'm going to put this out, and maybe we can even get it incorporated into the wiki here. I don't know. But the point is that nonetheless, it will refer to the actual pages here when you click on the mapper name or number, I guess, too. And it will let you read the details, because obviously that table isn't enough to understand exactly how the mappers work, and that's not the point of the table, to explain the mappers or how easy or simple they are to use. That was something that Kasumi brought up, is that, yeah, you could have something that filters, but it doesn't really explain if the mapper is good for certain things or not. And I'm not trying to do that, at least at the first pass. I just want to get something where it's, okay, I need something that does horizontal and vertical mirroring. It's okay if it's fixed, and I need it to support char RAM, and it should narrow down what mappers actually let me do that. So right now it's not done because it's pretty simple, and it also is limited to the first couple of mappers. I think I did the first 4 by hand. I just entered in the data, but it's filtering properly. So I think that'll be a really cool. I think it'll be a really cool little way of kind of narrowing down what it is you're looking for, and then you can use the wiki for the actual details, because ultimately the wiki provides the most complete information, and that's what that's what you're going to need to implement the mapper in the game. But I just found myself going, well, I don't even know what mappers use char RAM and can support it. And I was looking on Infinite NES Lives to see what boards he has there, and you know, that support char RAM, and I don't even know what I'm really looking for, right? Yeah, exactly, Bonshiku. The tool will give you a link that you can click on that brings you directly to the mapper page, so that you can actually see the details. I'm not trying to rebuild this. This is far more comprehensive than anything I'm going to be able to do or have time to do. So it's not meant to replace the information that's available here. It's just meant as sort of a shortcut to find the right mapper. So anyway, Bonshiku, by the way, I did see the post that you've made regarding your to cross-reference DB to find mappers. Yeah, basically it's I don't, yeah, like if you were writing a query into the database, you'd say, give me, you know, find all the mappers that have this criteria, right? And that's what I'm looking for, and I feel like a lot of other people would probably find that useful too. So, but I was going to say, I saw you posted your stuff for Mega Man 9 on Twitter, and it looks fantastic. Really cool to see that you announced that publicly. I know that you had been working on that sort of in secret for a while. All right, so let's get this taken care of. So we've got our entities file here, and right now it's looping through this is sprite part of the loop. We'll post a new video today too. Cool. What I'm thinking we can probably do is loop through the map objects now instead of. I apologize in advance for my clearing my throat. I've been running again and trying to exercise more, and whenever I do that and it's even the least bit cold outside, it gets me sort of congested. I need to. I've been in need of exercise for a while now, and mostly for the I think the stress relief, and that's just the one downside. So I think this will get us everything we need to enumerate this properly. But we'll see. So this doesn't have the. Oh, it's got everything I need except for the actual name of the sprite. Is that in the? Where is that information stored? I could swear that that's cross-referenced somewhere, but ah, man. All right. We're gonna make it cross-referenced somewhere because I need it to be there. And then this should be the export ID, or no, I guess it's just the entity count. All right, let's go back, because I thought the map objects. Oh, the map. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. This might. That might be what we need. Hold on a second. Because I know that the. Well, so this is actually what I wanted for this part, I think. But for this, does this have the name of the thing? Please tell me you have the name of the thing. You do. You do. Alright, so let's do the same thing we were doing here, which is let's get the name without the extension. The only other thing is I think we need to extract, because this is potentially a full path, we will need to extract the file name from the path. So let's see what we've got here when we hit this point in the export. What? Oh, too many commas. Okay. This is because that's that, and then we do need the comma. Okay. What now? J is, oh, yeah, well, you are correct, compiler. I do not have that variable. Alright, so let's see what we got here. Oh, so it doesn't have the path. That's great. The export ID is 7. This might actually be exactly right. That's not exactly right. Is it because we have multiples? Oh. Right, okay. Hey Paul, how's it going? Working on trying to fix my export process so that it actually handles the these additional sprites that I've created that don't actually have a visible presence on the map. They're it's almost like event points on the map. But that opened up a whole can of worms. So, been trying to get through that here. I'm pretty close. I've got the code working, except for this part of the export. So I just need to figure out why or how I'm going to get this working. So that's not work. Let's see. So that's not going to work with the current file list. And then we have two of the same thing on the map, and we don't want to export it twice. I could do a thing. I could do a thing where I export the way we have been and then export the map objects after consolidating them down based on the export ID. That would work. It's a little messy, but this whole thing is messy, so I'm not sure that will stop me. So let's do that. Let's oh goodness. We will make a this is NestDev is messy. It can be. It definitely can be. How's your stuff going with Aula? How's the port going? So I want to make this an array of character arrays. Let me think about this for a second here. That's just going through, and that's enumerating everything in order. She becomes a green zombie when hit. Okay, I guess I missed that. I haven't been able to catch your streams recently, so I was I think the last time I saw it was a few weeks ago. I mean, it looked like you were making some good progress. Let's see, so we have this. That's our entity count. It's been going pretty well. It seems like things I'm going each. Cool. Yeah, it's it's funny how in the beginning it feels like you're getting a lot done, even though you're kind of just making these broad strokes, and then you spend a lot of time refining what you're doing, and then it feels like you're just making these little tweaks all over the place and not really getting anything done. Oh man, I don't want to. Well, I actually, you know what? Make this simpler. Max map max object size. Memset that. I do feel like I'm spending a lot less time debugging than I did starting, but I'm also not doing it. Yeah, oh man, not having to deal with the attribute tables is my favorite part right now. That still kind of haunts me. That was so awful, and especially because I thought I was done with it, and then found out that I wasn't, because I had to go back and rework the meta tile sizes from 32 by 32 to 16 by 16. Yeah, same here. Same here. Logic. I don't know what it is, but you know, you talk through it and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this comparison and this branch and this, and then you're like, no, that did the opposite of what I actually wanted. And you reverse it and it's fine, and you feel embarrassed, but you know. All right, so this is actually less problematic than I thought. So we'll say if extra entities, and then we'll grab the export ID here, equals 0. We'll do this, and then we will extra entities equals 1, and I do not like having to re-look this up every time, so let's do this. Let's alias this map meta. What is that? Map meta tile. What are you complaining about now? Oh, I used the wrong type name. There we go. I was beginning to doubt my pointer usage. When you start to work on the engine details, progress becomes slower. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not alone in mixing up my conditions in general. All right, so let's do this now. Oops. Just bothers me to have the repeated lookups here like this for the same offset into the array. I don't know, just a legacy of too much time programming in C on a DOS machine, I guess. I don't know. All right, so map meta tile now is our launch thing, and we are now exporting that, and then we have it again so we don't bother. The only thing I guess I probably need to do is I need to make sure that those other ones get marked here as well. Because if they end up as objects on the map, they shouldn't be generated again. We'll end up with duplicate definitions. And I think that will effectively solve our problem. I think that's it. I think we're good there. So if we go back to the exported code, which isn't open anywhere. We go back to this, go to entities, there, it's there by itself this time instead of me having to manually add it in, so that's exciting, and hopefully nothing broke as a result of that change. Those warnings are normal. Reset the game, and then zoom through at max speed to get to the point where the enemy should launch. Cool, good. So they're going through at the right speed and pacing and everything. Let's fix that now because it's too slow. That was good for testing, but let's change this to, you know, like let's say 750 milliseconds, and same thing here, right? So we'll save that. I'm pretty sure that now if I just export one time, it remembers where it was exported, which is kind of nice. So hopefully that's that, and then run the export tool. We've got our export done. Oops. We replace those files, and we make the game again, and reset. Let's go back for a second here. By the way, how to manage spawning. Do you have spawners for a specific range that knows how to spawn specific entities? I'll show you in a second. Cool. Obviously the pacing is way off right now. Where are the... Oh, we're not there yet. Okay. I was like, where are the second set of enemies? There they are now. They're up here. So, okay, cool. So, yeah, so on the map, I have these spawn point objects. And in the spawn point, they have a type that I've defined within tiled, just for the sake of simplicity. Where it adds these custom properties. So the custom properties are the number of items you want to spawn, the name of the sprite you want to spawn, and how much delay between the spawn. Now, thinking about this, not yesterday, Monday, I was like, well, that could be used for a bunch of other stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be for... doesn't it have to be specifically for these enemies? It could be for a number of things based on whatever criteria I want. So they could trigger in-game events or other things. What layer of tiled are you using for those? Yeah, so that's the object layer. If you... Let's open up the map here for a second. So I'm importing the JSON file, which has been painful to deal with in C versus C++. I, for that, would have wished I had been using C, but sorry, C++. But anyway, so yeah, so there's this layer called enemies, and I know that's what I'm looking for. It could technically be called anything, but and then I have in it these objects that are defined, and they have these additional properties. And I know to look for the additional properties based on if it's called spawn point. So there can be additional logic, I think, moving forward where I can have something else called a something else, you know, like a game event or something like that, where then, or not even that, I could probably do, I don't know, I could probably, I'm not sure exactly how that would work in terms of naming and stuff, but basically they get this gets treated the same way as enemies do. So the enemies are all sorted and written out to a file in terms of where they appear on the map separately from the map. So there's a separate file that has the sorted list of enemies, and as you traverse the level, the screens, the camera's position is compared to the position of the enemies in that sorted list, and if the camera hits that position, it then triggers the adding of that object to the map, which is nice because then I don't have to keep searching whole lists of enemies that need to be created. I know that once I hit that point, if I hit that enemy, I can check for yet one more, but if it doesn't match, then I know that it's somewhere up higher on the map. The benefit of only scrolling in one direction. And so then I just added some additional properties for it to know that, you know, it's a non-visible type that has certain properties that are relevant to the actual type that we're working with. And so it has code in it for looking at those properties to determine what objects it needs to spawn. So it includes this export tool is doing an analysis of what sprites get brought in to know what the ID of the sprite is from this entity list, and therefore from the perspective of this drawing code that gets generated. So all of that kind of comes together into, you've got this one launch type that will spawn these little bit guys here, and do so without actually being present in the game on the map. And this was because I realized that if I put the logic into the enemies, the problem was that if you destroyed one of the enemies, then it stopped processing the logic that spawned the other enemies that you wanted spawned, and you had to do weird logic where the first one was set one way and the other ones were set another way so that they didn't spawn, or then you'd end up with a set of sort of like infinitely spawning enemies. That's one of my issues with scrolling in both directions and having a spawner that may be for one enemy, one point, with multiple automatic enemies for a span of screen, and the birds that span nonstop. That makes it hard to manage. Yeah, that is one of the nice things about only scrolling in the one direction. It kind of makes it straightforward. I imagine that you'd have to, I mean, you could probably do a similar thing where if you kept your place in a place in a sorted list, you might be able to do the same thing. I don't know how that would work exactly, but you have your list of enemies, and as you progress through the level, you progress through your list, and then if you go back, you have to go back through the list in the opposite direction to determine if you need to spawn the enemies. You know, because it's, I mean, I can't. You could have it placed on the map somehow, but that seems like it's fine for this and viewing it this way, but this has always kind of been the way that I've thought about it. I mean, even when I was working on an RPG for the Game Boy Advance, where you have way more clock cycles, you know, the enemies, the objects on the screen were always in a sorted list. And so as enemies moved, it would evaluate around, not that. You'd have the list of all of your objects on the screen, and as they would move, they would resort themselves in the list so that you could do the proper drawing in order to get the right depth effect that you have in an RPG. I'm thankful for the rooms in Alwa, as I only have to spawn enemies while entering a room. Yeah, that's also helpful. I thought of a head tail pointer from that list that knows which spawner to use. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Mega Man actually does it. We could talk to Derek about how he does it for Trophy, because he seems to have gotten that down. It works fine. Didn't seem to have any issues there. I imagine he's probably using a method similar to what Mega Man actually does as well. Yeah. And he's a little more active around these days, so I'm sure you could get a hold of him. All right, so we're good. We've got the entities showing up properly in the list. They're spawning still. I didn't break my code. That's exciting. So now let's work on the group destruction process and the bonuses involved in that. So when an enemy is destroyed, there is some code here for the player bullet that checks bullet collision. Where is that code? Check bullet collision. Yeah, okay. So check bullet collision is looking for any of the things that the bullet should collide with. He's a big Mega Man fan, so I'm sure he would. Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, even if he's not doing it in the way that they did it in Mega Man, I'm sure he's got some sort of method that he uses that works well, because I didn't see any performance issues or anything with Trophy when I was playing it. So whatever he's doing seems right. I hope he gets that released sometime soon. It's a really excellent game. It's a true labor of love, because he spent a lot of time working on it and really got it feeling pretty good. All right, so the challenge here is that when we get the bullet collision with the enemy, we're just exploding it. And we need to handle the group process. Now, I have a feeling we could probably get away with just handling it in the same way for every enemy we destroy, because none of them use well, I take that back. So when we sorry for all the throat clearing again. So when we add the object, we have to tell it which entity spawned it. We might have a problem there with... We might have a problem here with if the parent gets despawned before before the child. And that will actually that'll actually happen here, because once we're down to the last object we have to spawn, we clear the object entity. Hey Deedle, how's it going? Alright, so problem is, we don't want to do this, but we obviously don't want to create, or we don't want to keep the spawn point active forever. So we have a few things we can do. We can despawn this, not when we're done spawning enemies. I saw a bunch of your NES vids on YouTube. I wanted to check you out here. Cool, thanks. I'm glad you were able to find those and check them out. Thanks for checking in on the live stream. So we could despawn this if we do the same thing as other objects. Like, so for this guy here, we're just incrementing the Y position, and when we hit the bottom of the screen, we despawn it, right? Because if it didn't get destroyed, then no point in keeping it around. We could... I haven't really thought about this. So my original idea was, you have your spawn point, which is like the parent, and you spawn a bunch of little child enemies that do their own thing. And as they get destroyed in the parent, you have a group counter, which, you know, let's say is 3 because of the number of enemies you want to spawn. And as they get destroyed, this, you know, becomes 2 and then becomes 1, right? And then eventually 0 if you got all of them. So the problem is that if you have the spawn point spawn at the top of the screen and it spawns some enemies, if this goes away because we're done spawning, we have nothing to keep track of this, which was the original problem to some extent that we were trying to solve. So we have to keep this around for at least the lifespan of these enemies. Or let me rephrase that. We should try to guarantee that we will keep the spawn point alive for the duration of the enemy life span, because we could do something where we sort of jankily, we just do this janky thing where we just kind of let it drift to the bottom of the screen too, even though it's not visible. It's essentially just a timer, right? Where we're incrementing it once per frame. And when we elapse that time, this gets despawned. The problem is that that's not a guarantee that the spawned enemies that we have created are not still active. And so what might happen is we have this list of our entities, right? And if this is the parent and these are the children, and the parent goes away, that slot becomes open for something else, and we might have some new enemy that gets added here, and then we're going to go back and modify this guy, and that's no good. That will be a problem. So we want to keep this alive and spawn the new enemy type over here to ensure that we do not introduce... It's not quite a race condition, but same kind of idea to some extent. So that would mean we would need to keep track of not only the enemies that are destroyed, but also the enemies that are active. Now we have, luckily we have a few places where we can store some additional data that are not used for this thing because it's not visible, so it's not drawing on the screen. So we have the X and the Y position, which are both not used for anything. So let's see if we can do that. So we do add we add the spawning ID, the number of spawned objects, and the timer. And those are standard. The only thing is we can't really modify the X and Y position. I mean, we could, but we can't assume that we can. But, you know, we could based on... I don't really like that. We could based on if it's visible or not. That might be something we do. We say, okay, well, if it's not visible, then the X and Y coordinates don't matter. And so as just sort of a standard bit of setup, we are going to replicate the number of spawned objects into the X or Y position. I think that's okay. I think we'd be good with that. So let's see. So this padding byte is not actually a padding byte. It's really just a byte that indicates if the thing is visible. Which I didn't think was necessary, but I kept in because it kept our struct size to 8 bytes. 8 bytes, so that we could do the math with the shift really easily. That was purely just a convenience thing. But it may be good that we left it in, versus me figuring out the math to do the multiply by 7 bytes instead, which is always fun. So let's load that, and then we'll store that into T2. And T2 will hold that information. And what we'll do here is we will say load A T2 here. Well, it's going to be 0. So branch if not equal. So if it's not 0 to there. And then what we want to do is if it is 0, we're just going to hijack the Y position to hold that data. If the sprite isn't visible, copy the number of spawn, copy the spawn count so that we can keep track of that if we actually need it. All right. So that is good. That should be okay. let's make sure that there are no unexpected side effects of that. I don't anticipate that there will be, but that doesn't mean anything. I have been wrong before. Just zip through here. That all looks good. I can destroy those guys. One thing I really want to do soon is also work on switching the altitude. So transitioning to different metatile sets and increasing the speed of the scrolling to simulate the idea of descending closer to the ground. The other thing that we would do, and I was thinking about this because I was messing around in Crisis Force, because it's just a great game. Adding a shadow sprite here. And so as you descend, it would shift in closer, and also the sprite itself would get bigger. It would go from a small circle to a larger one to give that appearance of getting closer again. They use that sprite shadow effect pretty nicely in Crisis Force, so it's something I wanted to add in just because it's a nice little touch. Makes it feel a little more realistic. So cool. That didn't break anything. So let's do this. We want to so I guess one of the other things we need to do is we need to establish that, well, there are only really going to be certain enemies that are spawned in groups. So only they would have to have a certain portion of their sprite data reserved to handling that. I certainly don't want to just have that data populated for everything. We have the data word there, so that gives us, a decent amount of room to work with. 2 whole bytes. But after we load the object here onto the map, what I want to do is transfer X to A, push A, no, push A. And then load X with T1. That's the index of the object that was just added. And then we want to set its... We haven't fixed the problem of the parent despawning too soon, but let's get to this part first. So we want to load... I actually need that anyway for here. So let's do that, and then we're going to load A with T2 and store A into objects, entity, X position, no, Y position, no, sorry, data X. So the data X, so that first byte of data will have the current value of the X register for this entity stored into it. And then once we're done with that, we'll pull A and transfer, stop it, pull A and then transfer A back to X because we need that to be set to the appropriate value. And that will give us a parent ID. And then what we need to do is a couple of things. So we don't want to do this. We want to branch to skip object load. We will not despawn here at this point. We'll despawn the object Once we have determined oh, actually, you know what? We can do this here, but we'll check a different condition. We'll check the condition that the so what did I say? I said that the Y position is the Y position is the actual total count, and then there's the destruction count, but the only one we care about is Y position. So we do want to do that here. Then we want to say, okay, so for object entity Y position, no, wait, stop. We're close. So if we're not supposed to spawn any more objects, then we would skip that like that. But we have to do this first. We have to say, okay, if the Y position for the thing, if that value is 0, then we're going to clear the whole thing, because check the child count value. If 0, then despawn parent. So that's the more important thing we need to be checking here first. So we'll test that out in a second. If I've got this right, then even after we've spawned everything, as long as this Y position is not 0, we should continue to come into here, which is fine. What we need to do is now say, okay, if this kind of this is a little bit this is still kind of problematic. Sorry, I'm thinking this through. In my mind, I have a clear picture of how I would do it if I was just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it. But given our limitations here, and not wanting to add additional bytes to the entity structure, now the problem is a couple of things. One is when we process the bullet collision. Let's move this over here. When we process the bullet collision, we will potentially impact. Oh, I think I know what we could do. We will potentially impact a sprite that shouldn't be, but we could set that value to the value of the thing itself. So if we make it self-referential, then we would be decrementing the data value of the thing we're destroying, so it doesn't really matter. I don't think, because I don't think explode uses data. Does it use data for the frame that we're drawing? I don't remember. Let's see. It is. It's using data. So let's use data plus 1. we know in this particular instance that's gonna impact the explosion that we're swapping the type with. So we don't want to. Yeah, you can see we're even zeroing this out here. So data plus 1 would be a better choice for that. All right, so where is the launch code? All right, so let's fix this here. So this should be data plus 1. And then that's fine. And for the player bullet, no. Check bullet collision. Do all that stuff. We then load, transfer X to A, push A, load X with object entity data plus 1X. So that gives us, no. Wait, can I do that? No, I don't think I can do that. Load A with that and transfer A to X. And then what we want to do is we want to decrement objects plus entity. What did I say it was? Y position X. And then we're going to pull A and transfer A back to X. So that's going to decrement this, and we also need to do oh, wait a minute. Sorry, that was okay. This one, and also because we're destroying it, the Y world position. Is that plus 1? Number of spawned objects. Am I? Okay. Right, so this is the count of how many we've spawned. I should probably write this out a little bit better so that I don't forget, because it's already starting to happen and it's only been 4 days. So data plus 1 is the number of items left to spawn. Y world position plus 1 is number of spawned enemies left to destroy, and then Y position only used if current sprite is not actually visible. The number of sprites that are the number of child sprites. Do I need to track that in real time, like as I add one to the screen? I don't think so. I don't think I care about that. All right, go back to this. So that hopefully will remind me how this all works when I'm scratching my head later. All right, we'll see. So going back to this, we decrement the Y position and the Y world position. So Y world position +1, +1. So that's the number of destroyed ones. The Y position is the number of total ones that will have been spawned. Those both need to be decremented, and then we set our X back. All right, so then for this guy, if we hit the bottom of the screen, we need to decrement the live count, right? Because we didn't destroy it, but it's no longer on the screen, so we need to reduce the number of objects that the parent is keeping track of so that it can eventually despawn. And so that will be in data +1. We need to transfer X to A and push A. Transfer that to A. And transfer A to X. And then decrement objects. Entity data. No. Y world position +1. X, right? No, just Y position. Wonder if there's a way to do. I can see you can do unions where you're reusing bytes for different purposes, and you can name it something differently depending on what you want to do. Can you do unions in CA65? Because that would be super handy. Using the tag keyword, it's possible to reserve space for an already defined struct or union within another struct. That's a struct. You can do a struct within a struct. A union shares the total space between all its members. Its size is the same as the largest member. A struct or union must not necessarily have a name. If it is anonymous, no local scope. Struct may contain unnamed members and definitions of local structs. The storage allocation multiplier is below. Okay, that sounds like what I want, but how do I make it a union? An example of very simple struct with 2 members, total 4 bytes. A union shares the total space. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Using the tag keyword, it's possible to reserve space for an already defined struct or union within another struct. Space for struct or union may be allocated using the tag directive. So we've got this point thing, and then we've got a struct called circle, which has an origin that's a tag, a point tag. So is that just saying that I'm space for the struct or union may be allocated using the tag directive. Currently, members are just offsets from the start of the struct or union. To access a field of a struct. So this is a circle, the radius. Okay, but how would I access the point? No, this documentation is like bad college textbook. Structs and unions are special forms of scopes. Okay. It's just more scope stuff. So starts with struct definition, and then you have end struct. Oops, wrong key combo. Union. So is the tag a union? Anybody on here know? Allocate 2 words, and then you have a radius, which is another word. The documentation is leave something to be desired. It's possible to reserve space for an order. I assume that this is just basically like using the struct keyword in C, where you're saying this struct I'm defining is using this other struct inside of it. I mean, the only reason I want to use it, to your point, Paul, is that it's obviously kind of confusing to be working with these variables that have different meanings in different contexts. I would like to be able to call it as, like, something that identifies that this is actually a remaining count instead of the Y position. I mean, it's the same position in memory. I'll have to ask on the Discord later and see if anybody's done that. But, it's the same position in memory, but for my sanity, it would be nice to be able to refer to it by a name that actually makes sense so that I'm not trying to figure out. You can relabel the memory location. How would you do that? That's the funny thing, is it refers to the union, but there is literally nothing that I'm seeing that actually defines a union. Done it before. The ZP temp variables, I give those temp variables local meaningful names. Oh. Yeah, I've seen that too. I'll have to ask around on that one because I really don't know. Yeah, I know you can do the local labels too. I mean, that's sort of, that might help. I don't know. I mean, I still have to reference the, I still would have to reference the thing by the original name to define that, which, I mean, yeah, that will help later on. It just might confuse me looking at it going, why am I using the Y position here when I don't remember that I did that? So, I don't know. Alright, so we're going to decrement that and then make sure that we pull A back over and transfer A to X. That is important. And that will decrement the Y position of whatever the parent entity is. In which case, even if this were the same, referring to the same thing, it wouldn't be a problem. But this is fine. Okay, so this should, that should handle everything. So let's check bullet collision 14. There, happy now? Okay. So let's fire this up in the debugger now and see how crazy things get here. So I want breakpoints on my launch thing. I want to watch what happens here. I don't actually need I want to turn off the bytecode display. Thank you. Okay. And then for the thing itself, I'm not going to destroy any of them. I want to have them all just go out of scope normally, and let's see what the behavior there looks like. So, what is this? Check collision loop. That's... Did it destroy? No, okay. All right, so we're going to hit a point where the launch point gets created. All right, and so let's see, X is 10. So objects is at what location? Where's my memory? Objects is at 500 hex. So let's go to 500. And then I don't remember how. Oh, it's just at 10. It's just right here. Oh. Oh. Is that going to work? That might work. I just realized that that X value is the offset into the entity memory, not the index into the list. But that actually works to my advantage, because then I don't have to recalculate the offset. And because the positioning doesn't change in the entities, the objects list, that shouldn't be a problem. I just thought, oh man, I just thought we had a big snafu. So I think we're okay. So A is 3. So it doesn't need to be cleared yet. Then we're going to load the number of things we need to actually spawn. So let's break on that, because I don't need to do this for every single one, or for every single frame rather. So this will be the last. This will be the last one we spawn. So let's go back now here. And then we will step through that to make sure that, well, actually, I don't know that we need to do that quite yet. Let's, okay, so, oh, it's still only doing the check based on the timer. That's interesting. That may or may not be a problem. I mean, depending on how long the timer is, it could clutter up the object memory, but I think that's actually okay. So if we load that, we still have 3, and there are 3 still on the screen. It actually helps us with the debugging process right now, because We don't have to sit here and step through every single frame. Cool, so we hit the breakpoint now where we're at the bottom of the screen. We're going to transfer X to A and push it onto the stack. We're going to load the X offset, which is 10. That's all good. We transfer that to X. We're going to decrement this value. Okay, so we decrement that value, and then we're going to pull the value off the stack and back to X. So now the next time we go into the other loop, we should see that the value is 2. And it is. That's exciting. All right, so then next time around, we get another despawned ship. Decrements it again. Now the value is 1. Decrements it again. Now we're going to get to the point where the value is 0, and it's going to say, hey, we're done with this guy. So now it's going to clear it out. Yes. That is a success. So that's good. So now we got to test this out with if we destroy the enemies, do we have a similar amount of success? Well, let's don't need that breakpoint there. Anybody else picking up the new Zelda tomorrow? I've played Link's Awakening all the way through on the GBA, but it was a good one. It was a good game, and I'm excited to play it again. Yeah, it's tomorrow. I imagine they're going to have so many copies of that game available. I expect that will be a pretty big seller for Nintendo. All right, so let me see how I want to do this. I gotta shift. I gotta move the ship over fast enough. Oh. Okay, cool. Let's see. Did it despawn one? It did. Haha. All right, so the count is only 2 now, even though there were 3. Let's see if I can do this fast enough to not get killed. And now, are we still running here? Are we still running? No, we're not. Okay. So it despawned it. Oh man. All right. So that looks pretty good, actually. Let's. Oh yeah, because we have another enemy. Where's my Lewis script at? After getting hopes up for Breath of the Wild, I just decided to tell myself it would take a few more years to play after hearing about Link's Awakening. Breath of the Wild, that was a long one. I played through it completely, and put probably about 120 hours into it, which wasn't easy. It involved not sleeping a lot. But I really, really wanted to play through that. And then I bricked my Switch using a third-party dock before the cloud saves were a thing. And I did get a replacement Switch. I had bought a, you know how Best Buy and those guys sell, you know, the $50 replacement warranties. Well, for whatever reason, I when I bought the Switch, thinking, well, it's going to be something that's portable and it's more expensive than a DS or 3DS, I figured, you know what, it probably would help. Probably wouldn't be a bad thing if I got the plan for it. So that came in handy because they replaced the Switch. Problem was I couldn't transfer any of the data, so I lost my save game. And then I played through it again, including the DLC, which had just been released, and that was another, oh man, like another 140 hours. Way too much time. And that was kind of knowing what I was getting myself into and not searching for the shrines myself, using a guide to find them all to just kind of help speed myself up. But the DLC actually added a lot of time. Now I wanted to get all the shrines, all 120 of them. You don't have to do that to complete the game. But I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it. It was just a different experience compared to all the other Zeldas leading up to it. I liked A Link Between Worlds too. That was a really good game. I try to make sure that I take time for at least the Zelda games. Let's see. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The entity size is 10 now. So the type, I think that's in the same spot. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not in the same spot. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it is. It's in 6. Okay. The projectiles are totally different. And the object's address is now at 500. We'll just ignore the projectiles right now. I don't even care about them right now. Now the Switch Lite is maybe cheaper for people who just want a portable one. I think the Switch Lite looks really cool. I know it's not that much smaller, and I know that you lose the TV capability. But I probably will end up getting one just because it is a little bit smaller and the battery life is a little bit better. I thought about trading in my old Switch for the newer one with the better battery life, but you know, I wasn't really taking that around too much, that it made sense to spend the money on trading it in. I spend too much money on games anyway, so figured better to try and be reasonable where I can. What is going on? This is projectiles. Oh, why? Well, let's look at where are the projectiles? I don't even remember. 5 before? 5 before what? 5 before... Okay, so... Nervous about the joysticks and the light. Yeah, I know people have had that problem with drift on the Switch. I can't actually say that I ever had that problem, though. I've had problems with disconnecting and the wireless not working well on the Joy-Cons, not on the Pro Controller, but I know it is a prevalent issue. Having issues with stick drift on our Switch, not a big deal. Yeah, the I've even heard that the replacement Joy-Con sticks on the that you can buy are pretty cheap, and it's a pretty straightforward fix to replace. Yeah, the design seems not to be super robust. What's going on here? So this is like I think I reversed it. I think that's the projectiles and that's the objects, and I commented out the wrong thing. No, the drift issue is a problem with the internal context. Yeah, I was watching a video where they were showing there's like some sort of material that they coat it with, right? And that's been wearing off and getting stuck and causing it to think that the Joy-Con is that the analog stick is in a specific position, right? All right, so that's not. I'm trying to fix this so that I actually get a proper. Oh, I put the wrong address in there because I was talking. There we go. Okay. All right. So now the script works. Let's restart here. I want to just kind of watch it in real time. No one knows how they designed the light joy. Yeah, some. I don't know if you watch Spawnwave Media. He tends to take things apart and show how the internals work, and he was picking up a couple switch lights to look at the analog sticks to determine if they're going to have the same problem or not. If I had to guess, I'm going to say they probably will, just because from a manufacturing perspective, it probably makes sense that they would keep the same parts if they can. All right, so as soon as those 3 ships disappear, that parent, the 7, disappears. So let's see. If I destroy all of them, it looks like the parent disappeared as soon as I destroyed the last one. Oh, I missed. I'm trying to shoot them and look at the list at the same time. Yeah, that looks like that worked. Yeah, I hope they've done something where they at least I don't know if they can put some sort of coating on it so that it doesn't wear away quite as easily. I missed what happened there when I got the last one. That seems to all be working, so we're in good shape here because we're actually seeing the right behavior. So when this is cool. So what we're seeing is exactly what we needed to see. So when we run the game and we have the launch point spawn, it's going to have a type 7 here, and then we're going to get 3 type 6s, which are the little ships that spawn. And then as soon as those 3 are gone, whether it's because I destroy them or because they go off the screen, the parent 7 type goes away. It goes back to a 0. So let's start with, let's just destroy them here. Yeah, went right to 0 there. If I didn't rewind enough. Rewind. So then even if I crash into it, oh, that's interesting. So crashing into it didn't decrement the count properly. I'm glad I tested that. So check player collision is where the thing is that does that. And so that will have to behave the same way as check bullet collision, where it will grab the group count. So check player collision, destroy player and bullet. Where does it destroy the enemy? Load entity type, stored that. That's for the player because that's at offset 0. Are the hitbox locations generated on every frame before checking collision? If I guess I'm not understanding the question, maybe. I'll explain what we're doing, and then you can tell me if that's what you meant. So, for example, if the player collides with an enemy, it is using. There's a setup here where you set up these pointers for the object that you're checking the collision of. And then it takes the X and Y coordinates of the player and the the enemy compared to if it's a bullet or if it's some sort of other entity type. It will check to see if it should consider that an overlap, and then it will destroy the player accordingly. If there is an overlap, it's just a simple, rectangular overlap. I mean, it's dead simple. It's just a simple. It's just literally something like, what you would kind of expect, right? Where you have, if this is the enemy. And I don't even think it's actually 100% correct for the enemy size. I think the enemy sizes are fixed right now. So you have these two boxes, and as they approach, you get to a situation where, the one box will collide with the other, and that's what I'm using for testing. Yeah, the box itself is fixed. It's the position of the two things relative to one another that is calculated each frame. And it only gets done for things that actually require player collision with the player. So if I don't explicitly call this here, I'm not checking that the object collides with the player. To save cycles, because not every enemy, for example, or not everything that we spawn would have to necessarily collide with the player. It could just be something that's, a decorative or scene-based item or object that is not a collidable thing. Where am I changing? Add carry. What am I doing here? Destroy player and bullet. Where is it destroying the enemy? Entity pointer contains the address. Oh, this should be called object pointer now. I think this was renamed. Oh no, it's still entity pointer. Okay. My mistake. So entity contains the address of the entity that is so okay. So load entity pointer. Store it into temp pointer, load that, clear carry, add. Oh, okay, right. To get the type offset, I had to do this math. Damn you, math. Okay, so it stores into the temp pointer, and then I have my offset, and then I get the value of the type. Load a entity pointer +1, store a temp pointer, and then I have the data. Oh, I'm initializing it out. So it only creates the one. Really? It only creates the one collision when you collide with enemies? I don't remember. Is that true? I mean, I guess it's true. That's what the code says. Messin. Any Oh, I paused the game. Okay, yeah, it only creates the one. All right, so that's fine. I thought for some reason we were creating two collisions. Sorry, two explosions, but we're not. So we're just zeroing out the type and the data. And so similarly to what we are doing here, where we are getting the x value from data plus 1, we need to so we're clearing out the, let me comment this over here. Zero out the type data and timer values in the entity, the enemy entity. Although, you know, thinking about this, it might be more useful, or at least less confusing, to return back whether or not the entity got destroyed. And then in here, I could call clear object entity if it was. Because the thing with this is a one-off. And if we change, like, for example, it's not really clearing out data properly. It's only clearing out the one. It's really only clearing out the 1 byte, because we've expanded data to be 2 bytes. So it's probably, I don't know that, The current system uses the origin of the entity as the bottom middle of it, so I'm not sure how to manage the hitbox location calculation yet. It makes it easier for the entity, but not for the hitbox. Yeah, I mean, for something like that with the hitbox, if you're using the origin, origin is the bottom middle. So you're saying that well, okay, that makes sense for something like what you're working on. So if this is your entity, your origin is this point here at the bottom in the middle of the sprite or the object or whatever it is, which makes sense because you're doing a platformer, so you need that touch point. You need, yeah, that too. I didn't think about that, to flip the sprite. But I would imagine you're also using that to determine if you're on the platform. Like I've done that before, where you use the position of the middle as one of your test points to see if you're on a platform. I didn't think about the sprite. That's a good point. So no, I'm using. I mean, our origin of the thing is actually the top left. And then we have a width and a height, and same thing. So, you know, we check to see if there's overlap in the two boxes. Yeah, colliding with enemies that way. You might be able to simplify it by doing it as two separate, narrower boxes, maybe? Depending on if you're, I don't know. I haven't thought about how to do that on the NES. On a modern system, you just keep track of both points and do it standard, hitbox detection. Or actually, you could do that too. If you could spare the extra bytes, you could track the top left corner or whatever point you want for your bounding box, and then use that as your collision detection. Well, that's the thing. If you keep that stored off, you just have to increment it in the same way that you're incrementing your bottom middle origin point, right? And then you just keep track of both. Maybe that's how I try it, at least. Do I want to change this right now? What time is it? It's getting late-ish. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to change. There aren't that many things. I mean, I don't really have... It's the enemy bullet. There's not that many things that are actually in use that are actually doing this thing, so calling this. So that might be... I kind of like that option better. So I'm not going to completely delete this because this code, because it will be a problem if I'm wrong. But let's comment this out. Not too far. Okay, so all right, let's do this. Let's say our output is T1, non-zero if collided with player. What I like about that too is that if we collide with the player, we might want to do something specific for the thing that did the colliding, right? Because if it's a power-up, it may not be something that we want to actually destroy the player. We just need to know, did we collide with the player, and the entity that's in play that is checking that could then check, okay, well, did I collide? Because if I did, I gotta go increment their power-up count or something, right? So in some ways, this is actually better anyway. So we just say load a 0, 0, 1 and store it into T1. Let's zero out T1. Let's do that here. All right, so if we actually collide and destroy the player, or collide with the player, right now it's a destructive collision, but it may change. What we need to do here is say, okay, load A, T1, branch if not, branch if equal to that, otherwise jump to clear object entity. And that's nice and clean, because then we actually clear it the way it's supposed to be cleared, and then we can do other logic here that's specific to this type. I like that. I like the way that that works. So enemy bullet is the other thing. So load a T1, and then jump clear projectile entity branch of equal to this. I'll just hop over that. Could have done that here too, I guess, right? Oh, that's what I meant to do. I just didn't write it properly. Okay. Those are the main two. That medium thing is not in use. The flybys are not in use either. Enemy bullet is, check player collision is the thing itself. Okay. Let's see if that broke anything. If it did, we'll fix it. Otherwise, I think we're good for the night, because we made some nice progress here. Let's okay, good news. The cloud is not destroying the ship. That is an appropriate behavior. So we should get those ships spawning here any moment. And if I collide, that worked. Other than my collision being a little janky, it did seem to work. The player despawned, and the ship despawned, and then that was that. And I can still destroy them, and it destroys the parent. Cool. That's good. That worked the way I wanted it to. Oh, right. The thing that we were trying to fix in the first place. Right. So if... I totally forgot that that's what we were trying to fix. So if the thing collided with the player, not only should it clear itself, but it also needs to deal with that group count. At this point, we don't actually even care about saving saving X because, oh yeah, no, we do, because we need it for clearing the object entity. So transfer X to A, push A, get the group, the parent item, transfer A to X, decrement those two counts. Not the two counts, just the one. Because we don't want it spawning a bonus. So when it... Let's see. Yeah. Where's the launch? So it's looking at... Y position for if it's done. So we just want to, so if it's collide with the player bullet, then we subtract both. If we collide with the player, we just take the Y position away. Okay, so that will fix the problem of the non-despawning parent if you crash into the item. And then we're good. I think that'll get us where we need to be for tonight. Where is my Lua script, and why is it not running? Okay, cool. So we've got the player on screen right now, and we're gonna crash, and yeah, it despawned. I think the explosion animation carried over to the top, which is a bug, but I don't care about that right now. The other two despawn, and the parent despawns. Good. And then we have the normal behavior of if I let them pass by peacefully, the parent should despawn. Yep. And then if I destroy all of them, or any of them, we should get a despawn again at the end. Oh, I missed. Yep, that's good. And then the last test is destroy them all and make sure that they despawn the parent. And it does, and we have success. All right, so I think that's going to do it for me here tonight. We managed to get the group processing happening properly. And we have that working in the edge case of the parent tracking whether they're still, not the edge case, but the case of the parent is still checking to see if there are those spawned entities on the screen. We properly handle if we destroy or crash into any of the enemies, that it will still despawn the parent, which admittedly is probably less of a problem because when we crash, we, could potentially restart a section of the level. I haven't decided if we were going to restart the section or we're going to do what games like Crisis Force does, where it just kind of zips you back into the action. I kind of like that, but haven't really decided yet. So anyway, as always, thank you for watching. If you want to watch the full recording of this, you can always find it on YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Clairvis. I'm on Nintendo Age as Zelius. You can reach me by email. You can comment on the video in the description, below the description on YouTube, where I post all these recordings. And I do have a pre-order for this game, which will get you access to the source code if you're interested in doing something like that. Or you could just buy me a coffee or sign up for my Patreon. I do write-ups about each of the videos every time I post them in the Patreon, and I also post some super secret stuff I haven't shared with people publicly yet. So, yeah, enough of that spiel. Thanks for watching the stream. Take care, Paul. Thanks for catching the stream. Banchaku, thanks for watching. Everybody who's online, thanks for watching tonight. And I'll see you next week on Thursday at 9, and we'll keep going. So have a good night. Take care. Thanks, everybody.